Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Shelter in Place Salmon Loaf. That's right, remember that time you bought all that canned salmon? Because you saw that article about how good it was for you, and how it was always wild caught and sustainable, and a great inexpensive source of protein and omegas, and then you put them in your pantry next to your tuna, and haven't touched them since. Well, I figured since we're all working through our dry and canned goods these days, I would show you how to make this very easy and delicious salmon loaf. And to get started, what we'll do is melt a little bit of butter in a saute pan over medium heat. And I don't know about you, but one of my favorite kitchen meditations is watching butter slowly slide across a pan while it melts. I find it extremely relaxing. Until it reminds me I need to level my stove. But anyway, once that melts, we'll go ahead and toss in some finely diced onion. And we'll give that a quick shake and then eventually stir with a freakishly small wooden spoon. And we're only going to cook this for 1 minute. Okay, we're just taking that raw edge off. So after just 1 minute, we'll turn off the heat and just let it sit there cooling down while we move on to the rest of the ingredients. The first of which would be 2 cans of almost fully drained red salmon, which is by far one of the ugliest ingredients ever. I mean, look at that. It's a total horror show. I mean, we got skin, we got bones, we even have vertebrae. And if you wanted, you could pick the more horrific parts out, but I don't. Because while they do look terrible, they're actually just about as soft as the meat, and once mixed and mashed in, you won't even notice them. Plus, they are the most nutritious parts. But what we will do is quickly cover those with crushed cracker crumbs. Okay, that is a lot better. And yes, if you don't have saltines, you can use some breadcrumbs. And then to this, we will add a little bit of salt, plus a little shake of cayenne, as well as a few drips of Worcestershire sauce. I also like to add a little touch of rice vinegar, although lemon juice would also work. And that's it. We can go ahead and dump in our butter and onions. And then we'll take a spatula or spoon, and we'll mix and mash this until it's as smooth as possible. And I'm not exactly sure how or why, but the way this salmon is cooked and processed in the can, everything, including all those bones and vertebrae, get really, really, really soft. So as long as you mix them and mash them in really well, they will not be a problem, other than you knowing they're in there. So we will go ahead and thoroughly combine all that together with extreme prejudice, before separating 3 eggs and adding the yolks to the salmon and the whites to a separate clean bowl. And yes, I almost did that first one wrong. Okay, so to recap, the white is going in a separate bowl, and our yolks are going into our salmon mixture. And as with every recipe where we separate egg whites, it's totally fine to get a little bit of the egg white with the yolk, but we never want to get any of the yolk in the egg white. Otherwise, it just won't whip up into nice peaks as easily, which is the next step. And yes, in case you're keeping score at home, this step is optional. And you could, if you want, just mix in 3 whole eggs. But as you'll see later, it really does help lighten the texture. So we'll mix those yolks into our salmon. Then we'll go ahead and whisk up our whites into some relatively firm, but still soft edge peaks, which I like to call the shaving cream stage, which I don't actually think is a thing anymore. And I should probably update that reference, among others. But anyway, once those whites have been whipped, we'll go ahead and fold it into our salmon mixture in 2 additions. All right, and the first one is just mostly to lighten the mixture, so you don't really have to be too gentle, but at the same time using as light a touch as possible. And then once that first addition's been folded in, we'll go ahead and fold in the rest, trying to be as gentle as possible. And like I said, this is optional, but it only takes a few minutes, and when you're cooped up inside, getting the heart rate up's never a bad idea. But anyway, you decide. I mean, you are after all the gang leader of whether to be a meringue beater. But like I said, I really do think it significantly improves the loaf. And then what we'll do once that last addition's just been barely incorporated is transfer this into a very well buttered loaf pan. And as you do this, you'll want to kind of work it over with the spatula to make sure there's no big air bubbles in the corners. And we'll also do our best to kind of smooth and even out the top. And that's it. We will give it the old shake-a and old tapa before placing it into the center of a 325-degree oven for about 45 minutes or so. Hey, look, there's my tripod. Or until a toothpick comes out clean. So I gave mine a quick test and it was done. And then what we'll want to do is let this rest for just 5 minutes before carefully turning this out onto a cutting board, at which point we can slice it up and eat it. And by the way, if you want a taller loaf, you have 2 options. Use a smaller loaf pan or double the recipe. But you know what? I was just cooking for 2, and I don't have a smaller loaf pan, but this is just fine for me. And once sliced, you're going to get a great look at why I take the time to do those egg whites. Right? While it really doesn't create a lot of rise, As you can hopefully see, we do have a very nice light airy texture. Oh, and the other good news is, this stuff is very pale once you slice it, but in just a few minutes it takes you to plate up. Those surfaces are actually going to darken, and I think the color and appearance really improve, and it actually kind of looks like salmon. And as far as the sauce goes, my favorite would be just a simple remoulade, also known as tartar sauce. But a simple milk-based white sauce would also be very traditional and work very well. And it's kind of hard to believe that something that looked so unappealing earlier produced something so delicious and almost attractive. Okay, I'm not sure this would ever be called beautiful. Or if this was a blind date, it would be described as having a great personality. But it is certainly not ugly. And when you consider how good it is for you, not to mention extremely tasty, I think we can forgive any of its visual shortcomings, including those highly visible pieces of vertebrae I see on the edges. But you have to believe me, as you're eating these, you're not even going to feel those. And it's as if those vertebrae don't even exist. And now I should probably stop saying vertebrae and start saying, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.